selling is not just what happens at the beginning in order to acquire that customer, right? Selling is something that it doesn't just mean you got to sell in order to like sell something for X value of a dollar, right? Sometimes you need to sell them on an idea and they may have become a customer. Now you still need to continue on selling them on an idea of, let's go back to fitness, on changing their habits, eating healthier, seeing the value behind that, right? Any other good examples?
No, I mean, I think that's important. And I think there's two things. And this is where I see a lot of sales people or people who are in their sales mode, right? Again, if it's a fitness professional, selling is the beginning of the relationship. It's not the relationship, right? Like if I sell you a car, that's the end of my relationship with you because now you have the car and now you're gone, right? If I'm signing you up as a client, now that's the beginning of our marriage for however long this thing lasts. And so one thing I see salespeople make the mistake on is they set the wrong expectations that can't be fulfilled or start the relationship off in the wrong way. And I use the analogy a lot with relationships and dating. I mean, that's if you set the right expectation of who you are and you're authentic and this is how you operate, and maybe you're messy, or maybe you leave the lights on, or maybe you have these other things. Like if you don't share that with the other person, they're going to find out and it may or may not be drama. Same thing in sales, right? So you're selling somebody on what you're going to do for them. Make sure you're setting the right expectation. If it's going to be hard or they're going to struggle with making it in, or kind of the pitfalls that are going to happen, don't be afraid to set those things up and cover those. People will appreciate that. You see a lot of people in sales, they don't want to mention the downside. And there's a downside literally in every product or service, right? Your service, if you're selling fitness, might be 5 a.m. That sucks. That's early. Most people aren't used to that, right? If that's what you're doing. So that might be a pitfall. And so address those things. And then remember that it's always selling every time. Like say fitness in particular, you got to sell that person on showing up for the next meeting, for doing the work, for eating healthy. Everything is selling and reselling and retaining. Like it's always about doing this authentic persuasion sales process, like, and not even from a manipulation, but just like making sure you're constantly, it's not autopilot once they become a client.
Yeah. And also with that whole process comes marketing as well, right? Marketing kind of goes hand in hand, right? So then you might look at that as well. Like I guess it's the same thing like sales, like marketing and sales. It's through and through every single step of that journey, because you might be marketing them a new idea. I like to call it educational marketing, right? Where they've become a customer, but now you want to make sure that they really fall in love with that brand and have a thorough understanding of what's there on offer for them as part of the offering they've signed up for, right? So they might sign up and you do a series, an email series on like a welcoming series, right? So they start utilizing this and that, and ultimately that if people get engaged with all the aspects of the service, then they're going to get better results. And if they get better results, they're going to be more happier. And if they're going to be happier, when it comes that email asking for a referral, guess what? You're going to get more referrals, right?
Right. And the big key that I always try to impress upon my clients, companies big or small, is that it's one client, it's one customer, and it's one conversation is how it should feel. So a lot of times there's marketing versus sales versus, customer service, long-term relational customer success, but it's one conversation with one person as you're moving through. So it's got to be saying the same thing, right? Their impression of you and your brand or your company, it's got to be the same feeling where they know what they should expect.
Yeah. So the importance of consistency in everything, the way you inform them in your copy, in your emails, and the whole messaging, right?
Yeah, and because one of the challenges, there's sometimes in organizations, there's a marketing person, then there's sales people. And what happens is marketing is telling one story and getting people excited. And then what happens is they might not be communicating that with sales, like what was done in the marketing or the emails or whatever went out there. Salespeople have a conversation on the phone or in person, and they're having their own conversation because they think they know what they're trying to sell. but they don't realize there was a conversation already started in the head of this prospective client, and it's out of balance. It doesn't fit with what they heard, and then it just becomes a mess. And then you're having to fight this customer to try to sign up when you don't need to.
And they may have had different expectation. Good example is like doing advertising, right? Where you're trying to, and I understand that. I mean, there's so much noise, right? So much noise, and you're trying to cut through the clutter. So you decide to do an advert with really sort of hyperbole copy, really pitching it, painting that pretty picture, using that NLP language, or applying on the people's emotions and all that, in order to get them interested to click and give you that contact details, right? So that's an inbound marketing, right? In a way.
Yeah. So anything like that, I mean, that's the challenge, right? You've got this marketing piece that's getting them hyped up, getting them excited, and may or may not be true. Or even if it's true, it may not be what sales is then picking up and moving forward with that conversation.
That's right. Yeah. So it's so important. Now, on your website, I really like the analogy of an iceberg. Are you keen to unpack that a little bit, what that means for the listeners?
Yeah, so I call it the sales success iceberg. And most people are familiar with icebergs. And the fact that what you see in an iceberg is above the surface is usually only like 10%. It's like 5 to 10%. And then when you look below the surface, there's this giant iceberg. And I'm not going to get into the science behind it, but most people know that. So if you look at the image, it's all what's underneath. And, there's various other analogies where people use that for different things. I use that in sales because the iceberg in sales is that what you see above the surface is the closed sale, the closed transaction, the new client, the new customer. And that's what you see. And that's what everyone sees on the surface. That's what goes on the whiteboard when they ring the bell. That's everyone high-fiving about is the sale. But what you don't see is everything below the surface, which is the marketing, the nurturing, the scripting, the conversations, the objections, the rebuttals, the lead
touch points.
Yeah, everything, right? From management to training to corporate culture to mission and vision and values. Like there's so many things that have to go right to equal that sale, but everyone just focuses on the sale. How do I get more sales? Well, you got to do all these other things or some aspect of them correctly. If you want to have you can get lucky every once in a while, but if you want to have a scalable sales machine, there's many parts you've got to do right to create that.
It's like your branding, your ecosystem of what you do and how you do it, right? It's got to be consistent. Like you said, there's so much that goes into it.